You're on ABC Radio across the state of New South Wales. I'm James Valentine. Very good to be with you here this afternoon. Here's an interesting point. We read an article that suggested that this may be a COVID thing, a 2020 thing, that the notion around redundancy and unemployment, that the stigma around those things is fading, that it's perhaps so common, we're working our way through many careers in our life now rather than the one career, that to reach a point where you are let go from a job, where you're made redundant, where, you have to go for whatever reason, is becoming so common and just a part of anyone's working life that it doesn't have the same sort of stigma, the same sort of even perhaps trauma and disappointment around it that it once had. Now, I'll be keen to hear from you with your views, experience, if you've had any of these, if this has been you, if this has happened to you, let us know. And I suppose it'll be one of those things where there may be people where you were let go and you were redundant, that was terrible, and maybe 6 months later you picked yourself up and that was fine. You might look back on it now as going, well, in some ways it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think they're good stories too. Happy to hear any of the stories around this kind of thing. I think what I'm interested in as well, though, is does it not have is the social stigma around these sort of things now fading? Is this now sort of something that's not quite at the level that it once was? So if you want to call in, the number is 1300 222 702. You can text us as well on 0467 922 702. Karen Thomas runs Transition Hub. She's co-founder and co-director of this group. And I'd say from the name, this is what they do, help you transition from one place to the other. Karen, very good afternoon.
Great. Hello, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
Not at all. So what does Transition Hub do?
Look, really, Transition Hub is all about helping people navigate career change. And really, our approach is about helping people see redundancy or that career change as an opportunity to really recalibrate and perhaps reimagine a more satisfying and aligned, future that connects with their values or their strengths or what it is that brings them joy.
Now, I suppose initially that's going to depend a lot on the circumstance going into the redundancy, right?
Absolutely. I think that what we're seeing post-COVID is quite a change in perception around redundancy because it is being driven by outside forces. It's being driven by, the economy, organisations having to downsize and respond to that, which is a real shift from how perhaps traditionally it's been looked at, where it's been seen in a more personal light around performance or competence.
Right. Yeah, so that broader context will also helps ease the pain?
Absolutely. I think it in some ways doesn't make it as personal. But at the same time, I think in your opening comments, you're right that career transition is something that we all need to embrace as part of our professional life. And I think there is growing awareness, and that's also driven by AI and automation, that we all need to be more proactive in how we manage our career and to see these not as a setback, but as an opportunity to recalibrate. Yeah.
I'm assuming it matters enormously as well how the company itself handles it.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really, really important point. And many of us, for those that have experienced redundancy or know someone who has that is close to them, often the way it's handled has as big an impact on the individual as the event itself. And I think that there are some examples of where this has been handled extremely well, and there are some where it's been handled very poorly. And I think that then goes on to have such an impact for people around mental health and their feelings of self-worth and just feeling lost in where do I go from here?
Yeah. What are ways of handling it well? When companies do it well, what happens? What do they do?
Look, I think the biggest thing is that there is humanity in the way that it's handled. There is respect. There is a sense of open communication and transparency. I think the best practice organisations that do this well handle it well in advance of that moment of letting people go and prepare their employees in advance to be ready for career transition, as opposed to, you get the email that says compulsory HR meeting at 1 p.m. tomorrow. That's not a great way to handle someone's professional life.
But I suppose many companies would say, well, it's, unfortunately, we're losing money. We're just going to have to let people go. It's not really our business to look after these people necessarily up until the point they leave. Sure, we'll give them whatever money they're entitled to. That's where our responsibility ends.
Look, I think that has been the traditional view, and really for us, our view is that we need to better manage how we help people transition into the future of work, or we are potentially going to find a whole segment of the population that get left behind. So I think that this becomes a social issue, not just a corporate issue, for how we see corporate social responsibility around transitioning people into the future.
Kay has written on the text service, facing it again for the third time, still traumatic, still crushing, still badly handled, and it's always personal.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think that sentiment would be reflected by so many of your listeners that have experienced redundancy. And, I think one of the things that we are really trying to achieve with Transition Hub is to bring a sense of community to the experience, where people are supported through a cohort, through a network, to actually help navigate that change. And I think, unfortunately, so many people are left to their own devices and feel quite isolated and alone in the experience.
Yeah. We were stimulated to talk about this because I think we read something that was suggesting that those experiences may still be there, but the community attitude has shifted. That perhaps it's happened to so many of us, it's happened to all of us. It's not seen as sort of like there's perhaps not the shame around it that there once was.
Absolutely. And I think, to be honest, the younger generation are also driving that sentiment, because I think that they are coming into a world where technology is driving change at such a pace that they enter the workforce knowing that they are going to need to self-manage their careers, and that there will be multiple transitions throughout that life cycle. And I think where people need greater support is that older generation, where they've been with the business a long time, they have been specialised in a role, and it hits a little bit harder because they're less prepared for that kind of career transition.
Yeah, we're talking to Karen Thomas. She's co-founder and co-director of Transition Hub. We're talking about unemployment, redundancy, gardening leave, as someone says. That's what it's sometimes called if you're in that sort of business. If this has been you, how did you deal with it? What are some of the pointers you can give about dealing with it well, perhaps from a personal point of view? And do you feel as though we now accept that periods of unemployment change is, we understand that this is going to be part of everyone's career these days. Sue, this is happening in your household?
It has, James, yes. My husband was made redundant suddenly in April with no 15 hours warning. And I do think it is personal, as has been commented on. I think there's shock, and there's possibly a little bit of shame in the shock, but on a bigger scale, there is not as much shame around these days.
Mm. So do you feel as though it's been more among your friends and that sort of thing? Yeah. Is it like people understand it?
It's 60-year-olds thereabouts. It's a bit of a shrug, and that's a bad year. But for parents, so people of an older generation, quite old, it's been quite shocking for them, not in a shock value way. And for our children, 30s to 35, it's been unsettling. And there certainly is sort of a grieving is not a good word to use, but it's been a sad time that needs time to really think and mull and work through, and it's still there. Yeah. It's the first time in his life he lost his job ever. Yeah. And there was no reason for it, except that economics and construction, bloody, blah. So, and then it has to be a chance to, I think you said recalibrate. It's a really good word. Plan. We have to replan for our future. And that's a good thing. Yeah. Too.
What's he done? So this was April, you said?
Yeah.
So between now and April, what's he done to sort of to ease the pain, to deal with the grief? I don't think grief's an exaggerated word for this sort of thing. What's he done to deal with that?
Well, he's been doing a little bit of gardening work for our son. That's been good physical, so it's good physical work, and that's really a good idea. Get out there and get physical, and has spent more time with beautiful grandchildren, of course, and as I said, our parents. So that's been really good things, but certainly it's still there. It still sits there.
Yeah.
And hasn't been resolved. How about that?
Yeah. So, look, thanks so much for calling in. Feeling for you having to go through that sort of thing. And, what a year. Of course, unfortunately, the nature of this year will have brought it on in many industries and for many people. Sue, thanks so much for your call. Karen Thomas, Sue was sort of reluctant to use grief. I'm sure it's grief.
Oh, it's absolutely grief, James. I think that's a really normal emotion to experience, as is shock. I think for a lot of people it feels like a blindside because they haven't seen it coming. They're not prepared for that moment. And I think transition, any life transition or career transition, it really does take time in that recalibration process to let go of the old and to really think about, well, where might we go? And I liked Sue's comment about replanning for the future, and trying to see the opportunity in this moment, not just, the sense of loss.
Yeah. Eugene McGarrell has been through Transition Hub, which is what Karen runs. So, has had the experience of being retrenched and is now 18 months on from that time. Eugene, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good. What had been your work life up until you were retrenched, redundant?
My work, I've been working for 40 years in the health and community services, and I thought I had a job for life. And then 18 months ago, the job was made redundant, and I found myself in that grief space, lots of confidence, but more importantly, I think for me, that sort of sense of identity that you get with your job that had been torn away, and I felt very much isolated and on my own.
And so what did you do? What helped?
Well, I found that filling my days really helped. So, doing yoga, taking up yoga, but also engaged with a men's mental health group called the Banksia Project, and talking to as many people as I could, really, my network, and really talking about how I felt and what I was going through. And then I slowly realised that it wasn't just me that was going through this problem.
Yeah. So those sort of things seem to me like these are good practical steps you need to take in the immediate. What have you done about your career? What have you done about work?
Well, a friend of mine said she referred me to the Transition Hub, and I went to the program, which is a 5-day program, and I soon realised that I wasn't on my own. There's a lot of smart people who are in the same position as I was. And the network that I gained really helped me build my confidence and re-look at myself and reinvent myself. And I soon found out that I was showing up to coffee meetings, informal gatherings in a different way. And just through that, I got myself two jobs offers. And 3 weeks later, I found myself in the job of my dreams. Okay.
And so what, in a different area or in the same area you'd been working in?
It's in a similar area, but in a non-government sector, working with children.
Okay. And so what did you just take me back to that moment? You said it changed my attitude, so I was turning up to meetings with a different attitude, different appearance almost, you said. What had changed there? What happened?
So I was taking care of my appearance more. I think when I was not working, I was in jeans and T-shirt, but I was turning up in shirts, but also my posture was changed and the way I was engaging and communicating was very different. So I just found that those meetings ended up with better outcomes. I felt better about myself, and I was generating, I think, a better reputation of who I was.
Yeah. Eugene, all the best. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, James.
Karen Thomas is with us, Transition Hub. I'm imagining that there's no one-size-fits-all here, Karen.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really important point because the one thing that we really pride ourselves on within Transition Hub is a sense of diversity. And so we will have corporate professionals coming through who are employed. We'll have people that are experiencing redundancy. We have elite athletes at the end of their professional sporting career and veterans that are leaving the forces. And so that diversity is actually part of the richness of the experience and the opening up of the network. So, and also that sense of perspective. Everyone brings a different lens that they see the world through or see someone's situation through. And the experience that Eugene talked about of that connectivity with the group, that's all part of that change process. But yeah, I think that it's important to remember that it is about the psychology of change. It's not just about a rewrite of your CV.
Yeah. David, what happened to you?
Is that me, James?
Yep. Hi, David.
Hi, how you going?
Good.
Mate, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, I think. I got made redundant about 4 years ago and swore I'd never work for anybody else ever again. And I started my own business. 4 years later, I'm just turning stuff away and couldn't have been any busier. So,
and you wouldn't have done this if you weren't let go from the other job?
No, I was, I was working in the hardware sector, and that hardware chain closed down about 4 years ago.
Yep.
And that my redundancy was quite good, so that gave me the freedom to sort of build the business slowly. So I didn't actually have to get a job straight away. I could have taken 12 months off with, no worries.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had I'd always done gardening on the side even when I was working for the hardware store. So I just basically kicked it up and got more customers, and away I went.
Yeah. And what do you think, how do you think people regarded it? I mean, this started with wondering whether, because we all go through so much change in our careers now, that maybe those moments of change, whether that's redundancy or moving on for whatever reason, doesn't have the same sort of stigma that perhaps it once had.
I was saying to, I think it might have been Chloe, that years ago when you got made redundant, it was such a big deal. But I think nowadays, people change jobs. They don't do jobs for life. And I sort of felt as though I'd been sacked, but it wasn't my fault. And people were pretty understanding. And I just think it's pretty common now that you find people get made redundant all the time.
Yeah, that's right. David, thanks for that. Nice to hear from you. Sarah, what's it been like? What's it been like for you? Let me just check if I've got Sarah there. Sorry, Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Just cut out. Hi. I actually got made redundant fairly recently. So this is a really interesting topic for me. But I think it's interesting it's my first time being made redundant. And I think because of COVID and everybody working from home, I'm actually thankful to be made redundant in this climate. As hard as it is to obviously be competing for jobs with a lot more other people, it's less of a transition when you're already at home every day anyway. So you're not missing the commute to work. You're not missing seeing workmates every day. In some ways, there's some comfort in having already been stationed at home for some months.
Yeah. Now, I'm getting a sense, can I ask your age?
I am 40.
40, okay. So among the 40-year-olds, I'm assuming you know a few others, is it accepted that it's fairly likely that this is going to happen?
I think it depends on the industry, and I think once you hit 40, everyone has different, it's an interesting time of life. Some people have kids, some people need to, particularly for women, you need to start making some interesting decisions as to how you want to pursue family or career. So I think it's, for my age group and being a female, I think you have to expect that you're going to have to make some tough decisions anyway at this stage of your career. Yeah.
Sarah, great to talk to you, and thanks so much for calling in. Karen Thomas, what you're offering, something like Transition Hub, is it expensive? If people have been made redundant and worried about money, they may not be able to access your service in particular. Are there other sort of services around?
Definitely, there are other career services around, but I think the uniqueness of what we offer is that it is a group shared experience. And typically it's not paid for by the individual. Usually it is part of an outplacement program offered by sponsoring organisations. So the
company itself will often pay for this.
Company funds.
Yeah. Well, let's hope more of them are doing it. And there must be a shift. I mean, all the people I know, say 40 and under, they've got very little expectation the job's going to last very long. Seems to be a fairly standard attitude.
Look, I think that it really is the way that we all need to look at the future of work, and COVID really has fast-tracked us probably, a good 5 years on that front. But I love the energy of your last two listeners in that they are seeing this as an opportunity to reinvent and to become more aligned with something that they're passionate about or something that matters to them at that moment in life. And I think that that's the spirit that we all need to have in these moments.
Yeah.
And the support people are offered absolutely goes to how well they successfully transition.
Karen, thanks so much for talking to us.
Pleasure. Thank you for the chat.
Karen Thomas is the co-founder and co-director of Transition Hub.